designers, what I want to walk through right now with you is some basic photo retouching tips and tricks. And this is the list of things that I'm going to go through with you. These are on day 79 slides. The first item is to check the image size. The second thing would be to use the free transform to resize your canvas or extend your artwork or your image area, like your background, to the full size of the canvas. To use the Gaussian blur to smooth out the background areas. I'm going to show you a couple of healing tools. I'm going to show you the clone stamp. I want to show you dodge and burn tools so you know what they do, some adjustment layers, and then finally how you're supposed to save your file and put it into your other file to build the actual ad. So we edit the photo, we save the photo, export it properly, and then you bring in that exported file into either Gravit Design or Photopea to finish laying out and composing your ad. Please let me know if you have any questions along the way. I have to actually get out of this image of the slides so that I could go to Photopea. So in Photopea, I want to open the image of the Zicam bottle, this guy right here, that I took a picture of. Now, I took two pictures. I took one with the black background and I took one with the white background. This ad here I built has the black background. I'm going to work with the white background today so you can see something different. So they're on my desktop right here. I've got Zicam black and Zicam white. I also have a picture of oranges that I want to show you something with. So in Photopea, I'm going to not put it in here. I'm going to open that file, Zicam white, and I'll click OK to open it up. Now this is just the raw photo that I took in my camera phone. You can see it's kind of dark. It's actually tilted a little bit to the left. It's not perfectly even. I need to do some stuff to this, okay? Also, this image is it's like too large. If I tried to stick this into my ad, like, where is it going to go? It would take up the whole ad. I need to create this extra space around it to frame my product properly. So what I first want to do is check the image size. I'm going to go over to image size, and it's 42 inches by 56 inches at 72 ppi. That's huge. If you're not in inches, by the way, please make sure you are. Go to Edit, Preferences, and make sure your ruler units are in inches. Don't work in pixels, please. Not for this. All right, so image size. So what I can do here is I can reduce the physical width and height of this image and bump up the PPI, the DPI. I need this to be a 300 DPI image. If you don't do this step, you guys, your image will not look right. It will be fuzzy. The resolution won't be clean. So please make sure that you do increase your image resolution to 300 DPI. Now our ad size is 9.5 by 10.375. So I can reduce this image to like maybe 10 by 13 is what I'm suggesting that you do, 10 by 13, and bump up the DPI to 300. So I'm gonna go right here under image, I'm gonna go down to 10. And if this is locked, it will rescale the height in proportion to the width I just put in. So I'll click there. Nope. Let's do that again. 10. I click off it and it resized the height to 13.33. That's great. That's still in proportion. And here I need to actually change the DPI to 300. I'll click OK. And this image is now resized. Okay. So this is now a 10 by 13.33 image. If we go back and look at that again, there's the new size. It's 300 DPI. What I want to do next is I want to reduce the actual product, the bottle, so it's smaller. Thinking about the rule of thirds, I kind of want it to fill this right side. So I'm thinking about my sketch. I'm thinking about how I built it. I kind of want it to be this size. This document is about 9.5 by 13 right now, right? So I want to get this bottle smaller into this corner. Let's do that by using the free transform tool. You can do Edit, Free Transform, or you can use keyboard shortcut, which is Control, Alt, or Option T. And I'm going to hold down on the corner, holding Shift, and I'm going to grab from the corner and just reduce it down in size to about maybe like right there. I think that's probably okay. I'm also going to take this opportunity to rotate it slightly to get it on an even plane. And if you're not sure if it is even or not, drag down a flat guide and use like one of the straight lines. Now I think that's on like an even plane, and I'll click the check mark to commit to that. Okay, so that's better, but look, I have all of this transparency now in the background that doesn't have any image in it. So what I want to do here is I want to take the white background of the piece of paper that I photographed this on, and I want to extend it for the entire canvas, because I want to have an image that will cover my entire image area. And then I can put other things like I did in here. I put the orange color on it. I put stuff around it. Like I need a clean backdrop, okay? I don't want this image with the square bounding box to just be randomly placed on top of my ad. I want to build this so it looks good and it's seamless. So the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to select with the rectangular selection tool. I'm going to select portions of the existing background from the white background on this photo that I took, and I'm going to just free transform those by stretching them to cover the whole rest of the canvas. So I've grabbed that, and I'm going to do Control Option or Alt T to activate free transform, and I'm going to just drag that white all the way up until it extends past, there we go, past the canvas. We'll commit to that. Command D to deselect. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the rectangular marquee right here. And I'm going to drag all the way down to create a selection, activate free transform on that selection. And I'm going to drag it all the way over here to the left-hand side. Okay, Command D to deselect. And then I still have to cover this and this down here. So we'll grab a little section right here. And Control Option T to transform, drag that down. Now I'm covering that part of my canvas. Commit to that. And I'll do one more right here to get to the right side of the page. Control Option T, free transform, and extend that background so it goes off the canvas that way. Command D. Now I've got my background is covering the entire canvas area. So then from here, I could build anything on top of this. That's great. But before I move on to the next step with healing and retouching other things, when I dragged out these areas, you can see there's, I'm not sure how well you can see it on camera, but can you see there's like some texture in the shadows where it pulled out? It's not completely smooth. So what I would like to do is I want to blur that background to soften it a little bit so that it frames this product really nicely. So what I'm going to do is grab the lasso tool, lasso select. I'm going to set my feather to about 50 so that it doesn't give me a hard edge. I'm just going to select around my product. And then I'm going to invert my selection because I don't want to blur this. I want to blur everything else but that. I will invert my selection, Shift, Command or Control I, and now everything else is selected. Then I'm going to go up to the filter, to blur, to Gaussian blur. And I'm going to select Gaussian blur, and then I'll dial up that blur as much or as little as I want to soften all of that stuff around here. Okay. So now if I look closer at that area, you can see that those pull lines from the shadow, they smoothed out quite a bit. That's pretty clean, okay? Don't forget to save your work. Make sure that you're downloading your PSD file regularly if you're stepping away from your computer. Okay, the next thing that I want to show you guys is some of the healing tools. The healing tools are over here in the toolbar. It's just these couple that I want to show you. There's a spot healing brush, a healing brush, and a patch tool. You know, in Photopea, we've been using a lot of layers and non-destructive editing, but we haven't used some of these tools. And today I want to show you what these do. So spot healing brush and healing brush, they're like blemish fixers, okay? The spot healing brush, you literally just tap somewhere on the canvas or on your image, and it will heal that image based on algorithms for pixels around it. So let's zoom in real tight on this bottle so you can see what I'm going to fix. Now, the reason why I want to show you these is because when you take a picture and you zoom way in, you might find that you've got some you have some things that you want to clean up on the product photo that you took. Maybe there's a scuff on a shoe that you're going to photograph, or maybe there's a little dust, or maybe there's a scratch. There's looks like a little scratch or a crack right here in the bottle. There's all these like little look like maybe granules of dust or something here. And then this right here looks like part of the label looks a little funky. So I want to clean up some of these things. There's also a reflection in the window. Maybe I want to get rid of that. I don't know. So spot healing, I'm just going to zoom way in here so you can see one of these. See these little dots, you guys? Can you please turn on your mic so I know you're with me because I can't see you?
Yes.
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 Band-Aid
Yeah.
brush, you just literally click once on the area and it disappears. Think of it like cleaning a blemish, okay? So say I want to get rid of some of those dust specks, I just click, and it gets rid of them, okay? I can also do that with this little scratch right here. Click, click, click. It gets rid of those things. That's pretty cool. That's the spot healing brush. The healing brush, which is nested with it right underneath it, it works a little bit differently. Oh, I should probably say for any of these brushes, you can change the size of the area you want to fix, treating it like it's a brush by using the brackets to increase or decrease the size of the brush. You could also change that up here on the control panel, changing the size, and you can change the hardness. You want to probably use a soft brush so you get nice soft edges for most of these, okay? So here is the healing brush, and the healing brush works a little bit differently than spot healing. Spot, you just click where you want. Healing, you actually have to select an area that you're like, I want my area that I want to heal to look like this. So you would hold down Alt or Option and say you click it as a target area. So let's say this is the area I want to cover. I gotta change my brush setting. Say I want to cover this area right here, and I want this to look like this. So I'm gonna go to this area and hold down Option, and basically that little crosshair right there will say I'm gonna capture that area, and I want it to move it over here and put it, click again, put it right down on that area. That was, my brush size is a little bit too big there. Let's try it again so you can see. I want to capture this area where the crosshairs are and cover this blemish with what I just did. Make sense? Does that make sense, you guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do it again. I'm going to grab these crosshairs and I'm going to cover this area right here, and I'm just clicking to cover. Now the thing is, if you move, as you move, those crosshairs are basically moving in that whole area. So if I clicked right here, see how it's like it's moving along the same path. All right, so that's the healing brush. Then you have the patch tool, okay? And the patch tool works a little bit differently. The way that you use the patch tool is you start by selecting a circle around the spots you want to correct, and then you gently move it and grab onto the selection that you've made, and you move it to a spot near that resembles it, the area that you want it to look like. So for example, let's be on the patch tool, and I want this area right here to look, I'm gonna now grab the selection and move it to look more like this area right here. Okay, so the tool will replace what you don't want with what you do want. And you can use that on almost anything. I kind of messed this up over here, so I gotta go back a couple steps because I jacked this up over here. There we go. So once again, I'm going to use the patch tool, select this area, which is kind of speckly, and I want it to look more like maybe this area. So I'm going to go over here to that area, release, and then it changed those pixels over there. It took some of that dust out. Let's do the same thing down here. There's a little glitch right here on the label. I'll grab the patch tool, make a small selection, and say, I want that to look more like this. I just moved my mouse, clicked and moved my mouse, and it fixed it for me. So the patch tool does not have like a brush size, but the healing brush and the spot healing brush, they have the word brush in them. They act like brushes. You can change the size with the brackets. You can change the softness or the hardness. Does all that stuff make sense, you guys?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Okay. So the next thing I want to show you is the clone stamp. It's right here. It looks like a physical stamp. And the clone stamp works very much like the patch tool, except it has brush qualities. So if you're on the clone stamp, it has brush size and it has brush hardness. So let's say I made this, the hardness, let's soften it a little bit, but I made the size as big as it can be. Can you see how it's, the size of the brush is like the whole size of my bottle? And I also would hold down Option or Alt to say that's my target. Then I want to move my cursor over to the left or right or wherever you want to move it and click again. And it basically cloned the entire bottle of what I wanted. So you can do that for, like, say you wanted to clone clouds in the sky, or if you wanted to clone leaves on a tree. I think I might have showed you the example of the little chocolate tube of candy that my student used, and he only photographed one of them. He used the clone tool to make several of them. Okay, that's the clone tool. You may or may not have a purpose for it for this project, but at least you know what it is. So it's kind of like a combination of patch and healing brush. It acts more like a brush, but the function is you select an area and move to another area to say, put my clone down there. Any questions about that stuff so far? Roundtable really wants me to have pizza, you guys. And because I keep saying pizza, it's going to keep sending it to me. Okay, the next tools I want to show you are dodge and burn tools, and they're right here in the tool panel, dodge and burn. And dodge and burn tools refer back to the actual darkroom development process when film was developed with chemicals in a darkroom. And dodging and burning has to do with how much light you let in or how much light you don't let in while those photos are developing, okay? So dodging basically will lighten specific areas of your image, or burning will darken specific areas of your image. So for example, let's say I want to, I'm gonna be on the dodge tool, and dodge means I wanna lighten up a very specific image. Say I wanna lighten up this pre-cold little part of the label. Take it at the first sign of the cold, okay? I'm gonna be on the dodge tool. They also, dodge and burn, have qualities like a brush where you can change the size here or with brackets up and down, and you can change the hardness also. So I'm going to click right here. I'm going to reduce the size of my brush to be right about the size of that label. And I'm going to click on it a couple of times, and you can see how it just brightens it up just a little bit. Maybe I want this orange right here to also be a little bit brighter. And just clicking a couple times, it just makes it pop a little bit. These are destructive techniques, by the way. Okay, say I want like this edge to be a little bit darker, then I use the burn tool. So burn tool, let's click right here, and the burn is 700, it's a soft brush, and you can click on that and it just burns or darkens certain areas too. Okay, so I'm actually going to undo a little bit, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the burn tool to kind of burn the background a little bit. So I might actually increase the size of this, and I'm going to kind of burn a little bit in here to make the base a little bit darker. Okay, you can use dodge or burn. Let's switch back to dodge and increase this. Maybe get a little bit more brightness around the actual bottle to really brighten up the white in the background. maybe here, right on the label. So that's what dodge and burn do. Does that make sense, you guys? That's all destructive technique. Actually want to, you can also just click and hold and move it like it's a brush. I made some of this too dark down here, so I want to fix some of that. Okay. The next thing that I want to show you guys is adjustment layers. So there's just 3 kinds of adjustment layers that I'd like to show you that are good for basic retouching of images: brightness and contrast, curves, and hue and saturation. So let's go, I'm going back to the move tool, and here in my layers panel, I can see adjustments right here. It's the circle, half black, half white. If I click on this, I can create a new adjustment layer and select any of them, but I'm just going to show you brightness and contrast, curves, and hue and saturation. So let's click on brightness and contrast. Here we get the properties panel, and here I can dial up the brightness. I can dial up the contrast. If I wanted to make a specific selection and only adjust the brightness and the contrast of that. So let's do that again. Select this. And say I wanted to put the layer mask, or not the layer mask, but the adjustment layer right on that. I can adjust just the brightness of that specific selection. I can feather the edges if I wanted to. Okay, that's not what I want to do to this particular image, but I wanted to show you the technique. Okay, so probably want to think about a brightness and contrast adjustment. So that's one thing that you can do. I'll turn that off. You can also do something called curves, an adjustment layer with curves. And curves is almost kind of like using a magic wand in like on your phone. You want to make something called an S curve or a subtle S curve. This is a line, and you would grab like right here and pull some of this up a little bit, and then grab here and pull some of this down a little bit. And basically it increases brightness and then also gives you a little bit more contrast in some of the darker black areas. So curves, you can explore those. I happen to like brightness and contrast better, but you can control a little bit more detail with curves. Okay. Finally, say you took a picture of something and you wanted to adjust the color, like actual color, the hue of something. If I wanted to make my orange a different color, you can use a hue and saturation layer mask. And you can adjust the hues by the master, which will adjust the hue and saturation for everything. So hue, let's turn everything to green. It turns my shadows to green, or blue or purple on this side. But say I only wanted to affect the yellows. Say I wanted to punch up the yellows, the saturation or the lightness of the yellows. I could click here on range and I could say yellow, and I could change the yellow to a different color, and it only affects that color that I selected, okay? Or I can increase the saturation to really pop those out and the lightness so that I get a nice pop on that yellow in my product. So think about that when you're editing your product, like what you might want to do. Okay. Okay. If you watch the Edpuzzle, you probably also saw in the Edpuzzle there's a way to add a drop shadow. Like if you had masked your image off the background and you wanted to create a drop shadow underneath it, that's as simple as, creating an elliptical shape. Let's do it on a new layer. Create an ellipse. Oops, I'm on the wrong tool, sorry. Ellipse. You create an ellipse and you fill that with a gray color. Let's click OK. Option delete to fill that with that color. Command D to deselect. I'm going to blur that shape. As much or as little as you think you need to. Click OK. You can use a multiply blending mode. You can take down the opacity on it, and then you want to physically move it to wherever you want it to be. I want to show you one other photo because here I've got like solid color, but with some oranges. So I want to show you how to use a photo with some transparency in your ad. I'm going to file open this picture of some oranges that I took when I was walking. They were just, there was a truck bed that had a bunch of oranges in it. Okay. So let me put a couple of adjustments on this. Let's put a brightness and contrast adjustment on it, bump up the brightness, bump up the contrast, maybe hue and saturation on this, and I'll bump up the saturation of those oranges. And I'm actually even going to put a curve on it just to give it a little pop. Okay. Now, say I want this image to fade to transparent because I don't want just a block of oranges in my, I want to fade it to transparent. I'm going to use a layer mask. So I'm going to go to the image and I'm going to put a layer mask on it. Now, what do we know about layer masks? Black and white. What do they do?
Shows and hides.
Yeah. So black and white reveals. So I'm actually going to use a gradient to do this. So on the gradient tool, I'm just going to grab on the layer mask. I'm going to drag down a gradient going from white to black on my layer mask. So white reveals, black conceals. There's my image. I got some transparency going on it. Let's export this. So I'm going to export it as a PNG for this one. I'm not renaming my files right now because I'm just trying to rush through this, but make sure that you know where your files are so you know what they're called, okay? And then let's go to this ad here and let's go grab those oranges that I just downloaded with that transparency. And I can put it right into my ad and use that as a background up here and place my ad copy right on top of it for my headline. Here it is, would be in grab it design, drag those oranges in. I still have a transparency on it. And even with the transparency, you could also still change the blending modes to do other things if you wanted to. Let's see, overlay, that doesn't really do much, normal. Okay, so from here, I can start building. I could put my title, my headline, put the rest of the copy over here, all the other jazz that you need to do. Remember, you need a headline, you need copy, you need the illustration, which is that, and you need the signature.